Well, in the late 1700s, King George III was on the English throne. We actually talked about him in the Astor Place episode. Remember? Oh, you don't? Well, we did. He was that mad king who didn't want anyone to perform King Lear because he thought people were making fun of him, which they were. Anyway, he had a wife, Queen Charlotte, and they had a reputation problem and were accused of being cheap. So King George wanted to do something to shut everyone up, you know? He's like, I'll show them. I'm not cheap. Kinda. In 1780, King George decided to throw an over-the-top and elaborate party for his wife's birthday. And I think it's safe to assume she was probably very into this idea because Queen Charlotte loved making her birthday like a whole thing. On her special day, Charlotte liked being surrounded by friends, royal advisors, and young, pretty maids of honor. I mean, pretty much Charlotte she loved the attention. I think we all know like one of those friends who it's like their birthday month. It's not just their birthday, it's a freaking month. And you're like, girl, it's not that serious, you know? I'm sorry. If you're that person, I'm sorry. But like, that's Charlotte. Same. And the highlight of the birthday parties was when the cute maids of honor would wheel in a gigantic cake. Like, I guess Queen Charlotte loved that part. So the king knew that this would be an easy sell to his wife. She's like, more attention, say less. And that party in 1780 would be the very first formal debutante ball. So it was originally known as Queen Charlotte's birthday party, but over time became known as the Queen Charlotte's Ball. Now, if you scored an invite to this event, it was kind of like winning the lottery. I mean, it was a coveted invite because this meant that you were going to be part of the, quote, presentation at court, as in the royal court. So the girls were going to be presented to the king and queen. The age of these girls presented at royal court was around 17 to 18 years old. So it was not easy to get an invitation. The parents of the young girl would request one from the Lord Chamberlain of the household. This guy was a high-ranking officer to the king and queen, and he was the big rule maker when it came to all of this stuff. So Lord Chamberlain would decide if a girl got an invite or not. Her acceptance depended totally on the reputation of her parents. And as you can imagine, the upper and noble classes of society were considered to have the best reputations. Now, if a girl got one of those golden tickets, it was time to get ready for the greatest night of her life. She was going to be presented to the frickin' king and queen. For these royal presentations, a girl had to look the part. And of course, like, she wanted to stand out among the others. So step one, the outfit. The outfit. What did these debutantes wear? Let's talk about it. Well, in order to even be seen by the queen, a debutante had to wear a certain type of outfit. This included a white or pale gown, absolutely no loud colors. None of that. The gown must also include a graceful, tasteful, and elegant train. And the cherry on top was the headdress was made of ostrich feathers. If these requirements were not met, the debutante would be refused entry. No marriage for you. But if she got in, the debutante was then brought before the king and queen. Next, she was expected to bow. But this wasn't like any old run-of-the-mill bow. It was actually a very formal, very strict type of curtsy. And you had to do it perfectly, or you'd be judged, okay? It all begins with the starting position. The girl would be standing upright, facing the king and queen, and then would come the bow. The girl would take a step back with one foot, bend the knees into a deep curtsy, and slightly bow her head. The deeper the curtsy and the longer the girl held it, showed like more respect for the king and queen. It reminds me of the movie Anastasia, where she bows. I guess they bow in a lot of princess movies, actually, huh? Yeah, okay, bow. Finally, the recovery. The girl would like rise from the curtsy, step back to her original position, and then gracefully walk away without turning her back to the king and queen. Hard work, let me tell you. So once this happened, it officially signaled to the world that this young lady was ready for marriage. So bring on the suitors. The annual court presentations became the biggest events of the social calendar. And this kicked off what became known as the Debutante season in London. From May to July of every year, it was a nonstop string of social events, from like garden parties to races and concerts and like to other luxurious balls. The debutantes would network with other wealthy women and mingle with potential husbands. They had this whole system of dance cards. I guess each debutante had a card specific to her, and men could mark themselves down on it, essentially reserving a dance with the debutante later on. And the guys had to be fast because the most popular debutantes had full dance cards right away. I mean, it was serious business. They didn't just want to get married. I mean, they wanted to marry right. To do that, preparations for the season were intense. According to the late Fiona McCarthy, a debutante who was presented before Queen Elizabeth II, these preparations lasted for several months before the formal presentation at Buckingham Palace. Debutantes would spend a few months at a finishing school where they would learn a foreign language, work on etiquette, practice their dance skills, and then perfect that fancy-ass curtsy. And, you know, of course, you're going to Buckingham Palace, so it's like you wouldn't want to wear something that you already own. A new wardrobe was a must. Fiona said that every debutante needed a minimum of 6 dance dresses. 1 had to be white, and that was for Queen Charlotte's ball. 2 or 3 of the dresses needed to be long and formal for the other lavish balls. Then they needed several silk or chiffon day dresses. On top of all that, they needed to accessorize with shoes, gloves, handbags, blah, 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 diamonds, you get it. And when the season ended, they capped it all off with dances and house parties in the country. And then I imagine that they would sleep for like 9 straight days after that because this schedule, huh? Jeez. Now, Queen Charlotte died in 1818, but the presentation of debutantes at the royal court continued for almost another 180 years. And over time, the invite list evolved, and so did the application process. So let's say you were once a debutante who was presented before the Queen. That meant you were entitled to nominate a debutante of your own choice. And if she was selected by the Lord Chamberlain, you'd go to the ball at Buckingham Palace with her as her chaperone. And doing it this way made sure that the invite list was kept to a privileged group of people, like, daughters of earls, dukes, diplomats, doctors, lawyers, and bankers. This was all just really one giant display of wealth and power. So this whole thing was like one big fashion show. So it's no wonder that debutantes would be profiled in English publications like The Tattler. I mean, they were like the celebs of their time. That also meant that the debutantes were under an intense microscope. I mean, they needed to be polite and proper 100% of the time. And virginity was a requirement. I know, I was like, how'd they check? I don't know. You virgin? Liar! I don't know. The whole point of these debutante balls was to parade these pure, perfect young ladies in front of wealthy men like, you see? You like what you see? Like, take your pick. Yeah. Now, I don't know if there were any rules for the men, but I do know that men who got a little too handsy with the debutantes could get blacklisted. So that's good. Something. I mean, of course, like, there are gonna be some guys who take it too far. I guess, like, within the groups, there were secret codes that would be circulated around to kind of warn each other of problematic guys. One of these codes was NSIT, which stood for Not Safe in Taxis. And there was another MTF, which meant Must Touch Flesh. As in, like, this monster can't help himself. Don't be in a room alone with him. He must touch flesh. But despite the dark side of debutante balls, they were still sought after events. Because as we've learned on this show, the royals were the trendsetters of their day. I mean, if they did something, everyone wanted to do it. So the debutante trend became a fad that reached other countries real fast, including the United States of America.